Vover. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Debate DC. I'm joined by my man, Brian Kalyuzhny from New York, by way of Ukraine, fighting out of the blue corner. I'm undefeated right now, 2-0 in these debates. Brian has posed the question, how do we fix judging in mixed martial arts? Here's where Brian and his argument becomes absurd, is that he doesn't feel like you can fix it without some sort of bias. He doesn't think that there's a clear-cut way. So when we say stuff like put former fighters out there, Brian doesn't think it's that simple. So Brian, my man, thank you for joining me, and the floor is yours.
Thank you for having me. Well, basically, you brought up the argument about having former fighters. I think there's a couple other arguments to be made, but I guess we could start off talking about having former fighters. I feel like former fighters, they've been in this community of fighting. Not only they've been in the octagon with other opponents, but they've also trained with a lot of people. So when you put former fighters to judge fights, they'll have bias for either their opponents or the people that they've trained with.
Brian, I know what you're saying. I get what you're saying, Brian. But that's like saying that when I see Frank Trigg as an official, right? And Frank Trigg, who so famously had Matt Hughes beat, right? And then 20 seconds later is getting beat himself. It's like saying that if Frank Trigg was to officiate a Matt Hughes fight, he would not be capable of being unbiased because of their history. That's not true. That's not true, Brian. And here's the issue. We're talking professionals, my friend. We're talking absolute professionals, people that are trained to leave the emotion at the gate. When we go into a fight, Brian, the emotion stays outside the octagon. The moment that door closes, if you want to compete to the best of your ability, you leave the emotions out. So you're telling me now that because I trained with Cain Velasquez, I'm incapable of judging a fight in his opponent's favor because of that.
That is exactly what I'm saying.
That's absurd, Brian.
Well, so you're saying that, as soon as you enter the fight, you leave the emotion out of it. But
you have to.
But that's not true. Maybe with you, that's true. But we see all the time where fighters are clearly fighting emotionally. We saw it a couple of weeks ago.
And they get beat.
No, we saw it a couple of weeks ago with Anthony Smith and Ryan Spann when Anthony Smith...
You're talking about a guy that at 33 years old has over 50 mixed martial arts fights.
Yes.
Anthony Smith understands, Brian, how to rein it in for the sake of the competition. And then it came back out after. So it wasn't emotional. Emotional is me fighting Jones the first time, going way too hard and fatiguing myself. That's emotion.
Okay, so see, that's one example.
Yes, I'm telling you. So you have to take the emotion out of it, is what I'm saying. Anthony Smith didn't fight too hard early. He wasn't fighting emotional. Yes, he carried the disdain for Ryan Spann, but it didn't show itself until the end of the fight.
Okay, let's go back further then. Lawler versus Diaz 1. Every time Nick Diaz hurt Robbie Lawler would become emotional and try to come back even harder.
And what happened to Robbie Lawler, Ben?
And he got caught. That's what I'm saying. So it's impossible to be in there. No matter if you're an official or a fighter, it's impossible to be there without emotion. Even an audience member, they have emotion for their favorite fighters.
No, and we see it in sport all the time.
Yes.
Fans are emotional. But Ben, let me tell you this. I have now called fights for Islam Makhachev. I've called fights for Deron Winn. I've called fights for Khabib Nurmagomedov. I've called fights for some of my closest friends in the game. And I can sit there, and when Deron's losing to Darren Stewart, I call that and see that. That's as close a bond as someone can have for a fighter. So if I'm in position to judge a fight, I've judged a fight from the side of the octagon multiple times in the favor of someone that's fighting a teammate.
Absolutely. But the issue comes in if a fight is closer than, obviously if it's clear that the fighter is losing the round. For example, Holloway versus Volkanovski 2. A lot of people would say that's a robbery. And there's, a lot of people arguing.
But was it even as one of Max Holloway's friends, was it a close fight?
It was a close fight, but how did you score it?
But it was a close fight that
Yes.
went in the other direction. And I said this recently. I said this recently on my YouTube page. I go, look, could I live in a world where it's 1-1 Holloway Volkanovski? Yes. Can I live in the world where it's 2-0 Volkanovski? Absolutely. It was that close. But I know I was watching Max Holloway fight with Max Holloway colored glasses on. So I'm hoping that he won the fight. But if I'm sitting there as a judge, I have to try and judge that fairly because I take that job and I take that job seriously. The problem with judges today, Ben, the judges with problem today, Brian, is that they just don't, I don't think they know what they're seeing. We got a whole bunch of boxing judges, judging mixed martial arts fights, and they don't understand what they're watching. So they're putting importance on things that don't matter in the moment that they're seeing it. So they don't know how to score grappling. They don't know how to score effective grappling or ground strikes. They don't know how to do that. So they're putting too much emphasis on the stand-up when in reality, the ground fighting is such a massive part of the sport of mixed martial arts.
So shouldn't we require then for the current judges, the ones that the Athletic Commission employs, shouldn't we require them to just be re-educated?
Well, they are though, but it's hard to reprogram something, right? Because you got people that are older, they're in their 50s, they're in their 60s, somewhere in their 70s, judging fights. It's a lifetime of watching certain things. And now this sport has become so big, they have to evolve with the sport. And I don't know if they're capable of it. That's why we see some of the mistakes that we see. Well, we'll see a 30-27 on one side, a 29-28 on the other side, and a 30-27. How could people be watching one fight and seeing it so differently? Here's my reason why I say put the fighter. Because they've been in there, they've done it, they've experienced it, Brian, and they also understand positioning. So when somebody's passing, when somebody's throwing up submissions, they understand and can put value in those things much more fairly than someone that's never been in there.
I absolutely agree with you that fighters have the most experience when it comes to fighting. That's not what I'm arguing.
What are you arguing, Brian?
What I'm saying is
You think the bias?
It's impossible. Yes, it's impossible. You're saying, but okay. Let's take this out of fighting for a second. Let's say in the court of law, when they pick jury or jurors, they
specifically take people that have no real opinion of what's happening on the case.
You can't have people that have some kind of opinion, no matter what the opinion is. It's you just can't have it because it wouldn't work.
So you're telling me that you think Adelaide Byrd, who has been notorious for some of her scorecards, you think that she doesn't watch fights outside of the ones that she is judging?
She does, but she doesn't have a personal relationship.
Do you not believe that Adelaide Byrd has an opinion of fighter 1 or fighter 2 or fighter 3 in terms of being from the outside and watching? Tony Weeks. We've seen all these people watch. They watch fights. They're fans of the sport. It's impossible to not have some sort of an opinion if you're in the sport of mixed martial arts. Do you like Conor McGregor?
Sure.
Do you like Khabib Nurmagomedov?
Yes.
Do you like Ryan Spann?
Yes.
Anthony Smith?
Yes.
So you're telling me because you like all these people, you could never score a fight against them?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
That's exactly what you're saying.
No, but what I'm saying is if I had a personal relationship with one of these people, then maybe I would definitely be biased. I would not be able to score a fight, and I would probably voluntarily take myself out of it.
You would cheat.
No, I would voluntarily take myself out. If I was supposed to be a judge, I would tell them that I don't think I can judge this fairly, which you have done as a commentator before. I've heard you mention it when you judged the Khabib versus Gaethje fight. I've heard you mention that you took yourself out of it.
What I did was I take myself out of the fighter meeting. I take myself out of the fighter meeting because those guys talk about game plan. And if you're fighting one of my friends, it's unfair of me to sit there and listen to that with the idea that I will talk to my friend over the course of the week. So as a respect to Justin Gaethje, who I respect so tremendously, I just remove myself to allow for those guys to have their interaction. But if Justin Gaethje, dude, I called Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier, two of my buddies, and was able to just call the fights. I'm telling you right now as a professional, because ultimately that's what it boils down to. You're a professional, Brian. as a professional, you have to be able to disassociate that friendship. You have got to separate it from what you're doing for that job. What's happening is mistakes, Brian. These are mistakes. That's why the scorecards are so wrong.
Yes, but you're saying you're a professional. I agree. You are a professional. You're telling me that there's no other fighters that have done very questionable moral things that you would be completely comfortable with any other fighter being the judge besides you. You're an honorable person, but there are other fighters, and I don't want to say any names, but it wouldn't make sense.
Say the name, Brian.
Okay. So allegedly, I heard, for example, that TJ Dillashaw, people from his corner went to Corey Sandhagen's gym to spy on him and, like tell him what the game plan was and stuff like that. So you think people that would do that are capable of judging fights fairly? So
essentially you're asking me if TJ Dillashaw,
if those allegations are true.
So you're essentially asking me if I believe that TJ Dillashaw, if put in a position to judge a fight between Dominic Cruz and fighter
Cody Garbrandt.
No, because that's two he hates. So it makes it even. So Cody Garbrandt, someone he dislikes, and someone that he has no personal experience with. You don't think that TJ Dillashaw could separate emotions from professionalism and judge that fight fairly?
No.
What I believe is you underestimate the power of the professionals. And I think that's why you don't understand and you can't grasp what I'm telling you. And I don't think people understand what professional is. That's why Ezekiel Elliott runs faster and he's tougher to tackle than any human being you've ever seen carry a football. That's why the worst basketball player on that 13-man roster is better than anybody you've ever seen pick up a basketball. They're professionals. And when you're a professional, you can separate those things.
But I think where you're getting confused is not everyone acts like a professional. How would you be able to tell who would be a professional and who wouldn't?
Because they're volunteered to do this job. The ones that don't act professional won't take on the responsibility of judging fights that really have an impact on someone's career.
I would argue that
just think about that.
I agree, but you can't say that there could be zero dishonorable fighters that would do it just to gain some advantage for somebody.
There are dishonorable fighters. There are dishonorable people.
Yes.
But those don't take the oath of judging fights and dictating another person's career. They don't do that.
But you're trusting them. You're trusting them to be honorable. You're trusting dishonorable people to be honorable.
Tell me one bad fighter that is now in a position where they're officiating fights, they're judging fights. Tell me one.
None, because there are no fighters judging fights right now.
But no, I'm talking about officiating fights. There are many that are officiating, that are judges, not judges, that are referees. Tell me one that's taking the responsibility to have that type of power with someone's control. Tell me one.
I don't know.
Trig does it. I know that Herb Dean's fought. I know that I know Mike Beltran. I know everybody's fought. They've all done something, and they've all taken a responsibility to be the judge, the jury, and of all that when they're in the octagon, to protect you and to serve. They're the police. They're the cops.
But we know that these guys are professionals because they're where they're at because of how good they are. Herb Dean is where he's at. He referees every main event because everyone knows that Herb Dean is probably one of the best referees right now. But,
yes.
Okay.
Go ahead. But
no. But if I don't know how to explain it.
You're out. It's over.
No.
It's over.
No.
It's a wrap. And just like that, it's over. It's over. You're questioning your argument now. It's over.
I'm not questioning my argument. Absolutely. I'm sticking to it. I'm sticking to it.
Brian, it's over, Brian. When you just said, well, but it was over. It was over, Brian.
But I can't disagree with you on every single thing that you say.
Because it's the truth. It's the
Part
truth.
of it is. It's the truth that there are people and fighters that can keep themselves professional and that can always judge a fight fairly. But it's also true that there's fighters and people that don't judge fights fairly. We see it now. The problem with having fighters is they have personal relationships.
You see it in boxing. You see it in boxing at times where, but I honestly think that in mixed martial arts, they just don't know what they're doing. I don't think they're fixing fights. I don't think it's the 60s and 70s where fights were fixed in the 80s. I think they don't know what they're doing. And I think that leads to mistakes. But I also believe that the honorable ones are the ones that raise their hands and say, I'm willing to do it. Because guess what, Brian? The ones that would cheat, they got so many better things to do. You won't find a cheater judging fights because he will not go through the training. He will not spend the time to gain the knowledge to do it just to go and stab somebody in the back.
But they already have that knowledge. Fighters already have that knowledge.
You still got to go through so much training. You got to go through so much like education in order to judge a fight. And that's the thing, right? All these judges go through that education. They still get it wrong. They still get it wrong. The fighters who know it, that want to screw somebody, aren't willing. They rather go to Twitter and just talk trash about the guy that's in the arena.
Yes. So, but what about inadvertently screwing somebody by, again, if you were judging a Khabib fight, I think okay, Justin Gaethje versus Khabib, you scored the first round for Khabib, right?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. 2 of the judges scored it for Gaethje. I also scored it for Khabib, but you could see where
we're just watching different fights. That doesn't mean that I'm judging it in his favor. I just put more emphasis and I respect the grappling. I respect his ability to pressure the octagon control. Justin landed to get outside kicks, but you got to also remember, judges don't see Khabib in trouble. So when he gets kicked and knocked off his feet, they see that as him not doing well. Anthony Rumble Johnson dropped me in the first round. I won 4 minutes and 30 seconds of that round. Because he knocked me down, he won. So it's just what do they put the emphasis on in regards to the scoring? Hey, listen,
okay, then who's to say?
Last point. All right, good. Last point, Brian, because right now you're literally 3 steps behind right now. Last point.
Who's to say who's watching the fight correctly? Who's to say that you're watching like that fight correctly or they are?
No, I mean, that's what I'm saying. And that was what I responded to your question. I said, but who's we to judge, like you said, whose scorecard is the right scorecard?
Yeah.
You said on your question, the scorecards that we think are right. Who are we to judge what scorecard's right? All people can do is watch the fight and score it the best that they can. My argument, my rebuttal was that it's not that simple, and fighters aren't that petty to go through all the training to learn to be a judge in order to just screw somebody because a person's their training partner. Their careers don't matter that much to you.
I agree. I'm not saying they are that petty, but what I'm saying is they have in themselves, without even realizing, every person has some sort of bias. It's true. Humans aren't perfect.
No.
You're looking at it through rose-colored glasses and thinking that everyone is so fair, but they're not.
No, I'm not saying that. Hey, listen, I agree with you. There are people that are bad, but I'm telling you, those people that have that low value in themselves in that regard, they don't put the work in to put themselves in that position in order to have that opinion. That's what I'm saying. They won't go through all you have to go through to be sitting in that chair. They won't do it.
But I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the honorable people like you, for example. If I went to judge a fight, I would go to judge the fight as fairly as I could. Absolutely. But deep down, you will always have bias for Deron Wade, Khabib, Islam. You will always have some sort of bias for that. And against John Jones, even if you try not to.
But that's why I would never do his. Because I know. That's why I don't call his, because I know.
Okay.
Right. So I pull myself out of it. And I truly believe that more athletes, high-level athletes, would do the same thing because it takes.
I don't believe that.
Dude, Brian, listen, you're a bit of a glass half empty guy. You're a half empty glass guy, but it's okay. It's okay. It doesn't mean that I live with rose-colored glasses on. Look, I appreciate your argument. The reality is, though, Brian, when you said, it was over, son. It was over.
On that. You're
it
just
was over. That was when.
No.
And stay. Brian, that was when, Brian? That was when? Hold up. That was when, Brian. Hey, Brian, that was when. Strap me up again for number 9. Strap me up again. Whenever you did that, Brian, that's when they said, DC, there you go, champ.
You know what I think? I think when you said, I agree to me, I think that's when you have to send your belt over.
We agreed on a few points. We did agree on a few points. But the overall argument was lost on the, I think maybe dang, DC, you're right. Hey, you just fell short of going, dang, DC,
you're not right.
That's the only thing you did not do, Brian. Hey, listen, thank you for your time, my friend.
Thank you.
Like they love to say, strap me up. And still, the undisputed debate champion of the mixed martial arts world, Daniel Cormier. Hey, thank you for your time. Guys, follow Vover on Twitter, Instagram, and everywhere else. Apple Podcasts, all your iTunes. Find Debate DC and stream it as I lay the smack down on Brian's candy ass. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.